Okay, good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Beyond the Boardroom. We begin right on time. It is 9:30. Thank you for being with us this webinar Wednesday morning. I'm Diane Michael with Beyond the Boardroom and Callan Group Communications and Marketing Agency, here with my CAM partner and friend, Lindsay Lombardi with Coastal Living Association Management and Dominion. And we're joined by one of our association allies, Kelly Whitaker. If this is your first time with us, welcome. If you're returning back, thank you, thank you, thank you. Our goal at Beyond the Boardroom is to educate CAMs and board members in an easy way at your desk while you're traveling. It's the summer months. We don't take off in the summer because we know that your credits are due on September 30th of this year, even years. So we know that it's important to still provide you free education on a regular basis. And we started this course or this program rather on the fourth Wednesday of each month. And we've already grown to now offer education credits on the second and fourth Wednesdays free to CAMs. And now we're excited to offer monthly board member courses as well. We've teamed up with Martel and Ozum, and we just had our first monthly board member course at 8 a.m. So maybe some of your board members were on there. We had over 100 board members attending, and we're just excited to be offering these on a regular basis now as we have had them in the past. Do me a favor and mark down the next webinar Wednesday. Again, it's the second and the fourth Wednesday. The next one is August 12th. We do send weekly updates about our programs and our free courses on a weekly basis. So if you're not receiving the newsletter on a weekly basis, it may be in your spam folder, it may be in your junk mail. So go into those folders, please, and add us to your safe sender list to ensure that you don't miss any important updates, especially as we get to the end of your calendar year with DBPR, because you're going to need to ensure that you have all the credits that you need for your license. And of course, we would love it if you would help us to let your fellow CAMs and board members know about our programs. Please send them over to us. And as always, we ask that you consider the association allies, the presenters that we work with, as part of your one of three bids. We know it's also budget season coming up, so we highly recommend that you go to our association allies first, since they do provide free education and are exceptional in their industry, and that's why we work with them. Lindsay, do you want to go over just the webinar today for credit purposes while I put the agenda
Sure.
in the chat?
Absolutely. So, at the end of the course, we will put in the chat the link that you need to go to, as well as the title of the course, which is Anatomy of a Claim, the information that you need to provide, as well as a code word that we will provide to you. To show that you were here till the end of the course. So we do need you to make sure that you stay tuned for the entire course so that you can get that code word, because without that, we won't be able to give you any credit. And then after we end the courses today, we download that information tomorrow. So we do ask that you submit by the end of the day today, and then we'll submit that to the DBPR, and you should receive credit usually about a month out.
Okay, thank you. All right, attendees, I'm opening the chat up. If you guys will show Kelly where you're coming in from, they represent the whole state of Florida at FCA Insurance. So I love to show them where all of the CAMs are coming in from. And it is my privilege and honor to introduce your first presenter today, Kelly Whitaker with FCA Insurance. When it comes to protecting community associations, experience matters, and Kelly Whitaker brings more than 2 decades of insurance expertise to the table. We always say you wouldn't know it by looking at her, and every time we pop on here, I think that she just gets more and more beautiful inside and out. A Florida native and graduate of Cumberland University, Kelly began her insurance career in 1997 and earned both her Florida 220 and 215 licenses in 2005. Throughout her career, she has held leadership roles ranging from operations manager and commercial lines department manager to vice president, building a deep understanding of the unique challenges faced by businesses and community associations alike. Today, Kelly serves as a key member of the team at FCA Insurance, where she specializes in helping associations identify, manage, and mitigate risk through thoughtful insurance planning and education. Beyond her professional accomplishments, Kelly is a passionate advocate for community association education. She currently serves on the board of the Volusia Community Association Advisors, VCAA, supporting educational opportunities for CAMs, board members, and maintenance professionals. She has also represented the industry through participation in CAI's Congressional Advocacy Summit, contributing to important discussions impacting associations across Florida and beyond. Known for her practical approach, industry knowledge, and commitment to helping communities succeed, Kelly brings valuable insight and real world perspectives to today's webinar Wednesday. Please help us in welcoming Ms. Kelly.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Today's webinar will be hopefully a very informative one, but claims are not something that, any of us enjoy dealing with, whether you're an agent or an adjuster or a CAM or a board member. It can be a trying process. So I'm going to hopefully go through some things that will help you if you are in this situation where you're having to deal with a claim. So, understanding the claims process. It's a little bit tricky to educate on this because we're not just talking about one type of insurance claim. Associations are going to have multiple insurance policies, and each policy will have its own type of claim. So there could be many different incidents that trigger a claim. It could be a slip and fall. It could be a hurricane. It could be theft of association funds. There's a whole lot of unfortunate incidents that put a CAM into the position of handling an insurance claim. And obviously, the main thing that we think about when it comes to insurance in Florida is hurricanes. So that can be a beast in and of itself. So if you're dealing with a general liability claim, again, that could be a slip and fall. That could be a leak that occurred that impacted multiple units that you have to figure out where the responsibility lies, what association property is damaged, what liability the association has for those individual units. D&O claims, directors and officers liability claims, unfortunately, are a common claim occurrence that happens if somebody's unhappy with a board decision, which I'm sure CAMs never experience owners being unhappy with the decision that the board has made. So we see those claims. We do see those theft of association funds claims come up occasionally. And again, the property insurance claims. I'd like to say that claims are infrequent when it comes to HOAs and condo associations, but we've had so many claims filed in the past 2 months alone, ranging from fire to somebody slipping down the stairs. It happens all the time. And so if you can be prepared and kind of know what the process entails, it'll put you at an advantage when you're dealing with this process. And it's not usually a very quick process. It can be drawn out to 30, 60 days. Sometimes it gets drawn out years. You as the CAM are going to be responsible for a lot depending on what your particular contract is with each association. The CAM, the boards are going to be responsible for doing things like making sure the property is secured. If windows have to get boarded up, if areas need to be taped off, if pavers need to be secured because somebody slipped on a paver. The very summarized version of today's webinar is document everything and don't say it's your fault. That's the short version of today's webinar, but we're going to go into some more detail. The timeline of a typical claim, there are certain criteria that carriers are now bound to due to legislative changes in Florida. So a carrier is supposed to acknowledge that they've received your claim within 7 days. They are supposed to inspect the property if that's part of the claims process within 30 days. And they're supposed to notify you whether or not they're going to pay out on a claim or deny a claim within 60 days. And then once they've settled on something, they've got to get you a payment within 20 days. Property insurance claims, you have 1 year to file in Florida, hurricane claims, and then you've got 18 months from the date of the storm to get any supplemental claims filed. We have found that because of the new timelines that carriers are bound to, that they are quicker to make a fast payment, but it might not be a complete payment. So you will see something within the paperwork that says that you need to contact the carrier if there's items missing from that. So do not think that you got a check and that's all that the carrier is going to pay and that you have to go hire an attorney. Reach out to your agent if you need to understand what that process is, but discuss that with the adjuster and make sure that you have all the documentation into them so they can review it for a supplemental claim within a particular time frame. Something else too that also comes up in a claims process is going to be the bylaws. So each association has their own bylaws, obviously, and sometimes bylaws can include certain clauses as to if an incident occurs from a unit that unit owner might be subject to the repair cost, whether or not they have insurance. Some bylaws require owners to carry insurance. Some bylaws have different clauses on windows and doors. So you need to be familiar with what the bylaws for the association that's having the claim, what those state. Hopefully they have clear bylaws, but sometimes they can be pretty ambiguous. The immediate response priorities for a CAM or a board is going to find out if anybody's injured and to make sure that the injured party has any medical attention that they might need. You want to make sure that the property is secure, meaning in the event of a hurricane, if there is severe damage to a building, that people are not inside of the building. If there is a fire, you obviously want to make sure that the local authorities have cleared the building for anybody to stay in the building. Again, you're going to want to do things if you need to board up windows. We recently had a fire down the street in one of our condo associations. It was inside of a unit. It was contained to that unit, but they had to break in through the slider in one of the windows. And so there were sharp shards of glass. And you wanted to make sure that those windows and doors were covered up so that nobody's trying to get into the unit and cut themselves. And now you've got a liability claim on top of a property claim. And again, too, to tape off an area, if there's an area that's been damaged, or like an HOA, if there's some sidewalk area that is cracked and somebody could slip or has slipped on that area, you want to make sure that you've taped it off. Or a lot of times you'll see sidewalks have yellow spray paint to show an area to draw attention, to make sure that people see that there's an issue there and they can walk around it. You want to reach out to the agent for the association and have that talk with them as soon as possible about what has occurred, what you think the estimate for repairs might be if it's a property damage. If it's somebody was injured, you need to know, have they sought medical attention? Is it severe enough that they're going to need to seek medical attention? So you can try to find out if it's going to turn into an actual insurance claim. Not all incidents do turn into an insurance claim. Part of that is because of deductibles, which we'll discuss a little bit later on. But make sure that you have that conversation with your agent immediately, because you do want to get a claim turned in a timely manner to prevent any type of coverage issues that could arise from not turning it in when you're supposed to. For instance, if you reach out to your attorney for the association and that attorney begins the process of dealing with the claimant, then that can impede the insurance carrier's ability to process the claim in a manner that they would, and you could have coverage jeopardized in that incident. So just make sure that you're having those conversations with the insurance agent. And then you want to make sure to coordinate with your emergency vendors. We highly suggest that you have a pre-approved list of emergency vendors so that in the event of an incident, you're not having to figure out who to call at the last minute, especially if it's after hours. Like, again, the fire that I discussed, that fire happened on the weekend. It happened later in the day. And by the time people realized that windows needed to be boarded up, the hardware stores were already closed for the day. And so it was hard to find material to cover up those windows. So you kind of want to have a plan in place, maybe even some materials like the windows or like caution tape already set aside somewhere on the property so that you have it to use in those incidents. If you're having to call an emergency response vendor like a water remediation company at the last minute, you can be stuck with maybe a company that you wouldn't hire under other circumstances, maybe one that's not as reputable. So have that list. If you're trying to select a vendor, ask them for referrals. Another thing you can do when you're looking for a vendor is you can search for permits pulled by that vendor and reach out to the properties that those permits were pulled for to get an idea of how those vendors worked for another association. We also strongly recommend that you're using vendors that are used to dealing with HOAs and condo associations and are familiar with how processes work within a community association, because they can be very different from a regular business owner or a single family homeowner hiring a vendor. Something else you need to make sure that you understand is who is going to sign the approval to do work. So if a water remediation company comes out because there was a water heater leak inside of a unit that went into another unit, and that vendor is going to come out and they're going to ask somebody to sign a work order. So if it's not the association's property, if the unit owner is there, you need to know for sure who's signing that work order, because in the end, the invoice is going to end up going to who signed that work order. And you need to know how that will play out with association responsibilities versus a unit owner's responsibilities. Documentation best practices. Documentation is one of the most important parts of a claim process for the CAM and the board. It is very important to take pictures of an area where an incident occurred. If it's a liability issue, if somebody claims that they fell in an area, you want to document not only if there's a broken step, is it important to have that picture, but it's also important to have a picture if there's not a broken step. So if they said they fell on these stairs and they're claiming that there's a broken step, it's very important to have documentation that that is not the case and that the area was in working order. Video surveillance is something that's much more common these days in HOAs and in condo associations. If you are aware of an incident, you want to make sure that you've pulled that video footage and saved it somewhere. We as an agent, we always offer to our associations, if you know of an incident, it might not be a claim yet, but you've got footage, send it to us. We'll keep it in the file. That way, if it comes up in a few months from now, we already have it on file. And it's saved someplace other than just with the CAM or the board. It can be difficult with surveillance footage if you don't know of an incident, because a lot of the camera footage is only stored for 30 or 60 days. And claimants have become aware of that. And we find that they will wait until that time period has passed before filing a lawsuit. And at that point, you don't have the ability to go back to the time that they say they were injured to show what did or did not happen. We do recommend that you suggest to your boards to find out how much it would cost to extend the time period that the storage period for the surveillance footage. Sometimes it's not very much money, and if you've got a longer time period, it can help you very much in an incident. So again, somebody can say, I slipped and fell. They hired an attorney and they say, I fell on this date. You go back and find the footage and you can show there was no such incident, and then that helps you get out of that legal situation. It is also important to collect witness statements. So usually there's people around that have seen something, and if you can get them to write down what they saw or did not see, as soon as it happens, the memory is freshest right away. If you wait 30 days or 60 days, it could be difficult to recall exactly what happened. And you want to make sure that you have more than just the injured party stating what happened on that time, and record it. And even if it's you, the CAM, that saw it, go ahead and write your statement down and keep it with the incident report. Anytime there's an incident on a property, whether it's a property damage incident or a liability incident, you want to make sure that an incident report is filled out. Whether or not you know it's going to turn into a claim, go ahead and write out that form so that you have all the information and you're not having to go back and dig it up 30 days, a year from now when a lawsuit actually comes up. And you want to have a method of organizing and storing that documentation. especially because, boards change and you want to make sure that you as the CAM have it on file in case it comes up at a later date. Something that insurance carriers ask us frequently is whether or not an association has an accident or an incident investigation plan in place. So it's a very good idea to have a certain procedure that anytime a liability, a property incident comes up, you have steps that you followed and you document those steps so that it's not a guessing game each time something happens. You already know exactly what needs to be done, who needs to be called, whose statements need to be taken down, and it's all right there for you or for the board without question. Communicating with residents, whether it's a resident that's involved in the incident or residents that can be impacted by an incident, is very important. I'm sure that CAMs have experienced, again, a fire occurs and all of a sudden everybody wants to know what's going on and everybody has an opinion about it. So if you can communicate proactively and let them know this incident occurred on the property, this is the steps that are being taken, and this is the timeline that we expect it to happen, so that you're not having to field 100 different phone calls all asking about the same incident. And you want to make sure that the board is kept up to date. In case anybody needs to get involved, they need to be aware of what's going on and to manage expectations and be transparent with the process. That's very important for community associations. Timelines can be a lot longer than what an owner or a board might expect. So it's very good to have that conversation ahead of time. This is the time frame that we're likely dealing with, and these are the steps that are going to have to occur in order to get us where we need to be to get repairs made, to get this liability incident taken care of. Again, a liability claim could go on for quite a long time if a lawyer gets involved. And the biggest part about communication is to not make any statement that can impact the carrier's ability to defend you in a claim. Just like people tell you when a car accident happens, you don't want to get out of the car and say, "Oh my God, that's my fault. I'm so sorry." When an incident occurs, it can put people into shock depending on the type of incident. And you want to just say as little as possible, observe, take in information before you make any type of statement. And again, at no point should you be accepting liability on behalf of the association. Common mistakes to avoid with a claim: delaying reporting of incidents is something that can again impact coverage. So you want to make sure that you're talking to your insurance agent as soon as possible to find out what your timeframes are for reporting a claim, how long you have to decide whether or not you want to report a claim. Because of the deductibles being higher on property insurance, if the repairs aren't going to be much more than the deductible, then more than likely the board's not going to want to file a claim because it could impact their next insurance renewal, their insurance premiums. So it might not be known right away whether or not the repair costs are going to exceed that deductible. So you need to know what time frame you are working with before you have to meet that deadline of filing a claim. You also want to make sure that the carrier has a chance to come out and inspect before any evidence is gone of what occurred. And that could be liability or property damage. So don't just go ahead and do repairs immediately. You are required to take certain steps to prevent further damage from occurring, such as tarping a roof or boarding up windows, but you don't want to just go ahead and start making repairs right away. If you have improper or incomplete documentation, it can delay the claims process. Something very important to get when you're dealing with vendors, if you're getting an estimate or you have an invoice for partial repairs, you want to make sure that the vendor is stating on that estimate or invoice what the cause of damage was, because the insurance carrier is going to go to that expert to get what their position on what caused it. If it was lightning damage, if it was a power surge, if it comes to a hurricane, the carriers want to know, was it wind that caused this damage? Was it wind-driven rain? Was it flood that caused the damage? So the specifics of that need to be included in the documentation from the vendors. And they also need to provide photos to show how they determined that. If there's a power surge or a lightning strike, there will usually be physical indications on equipment. So that's something that needs to be documented. And again, you do not want to admit fault or liability prematurely. Creating a standard operations procedure is very important as part of the claim response. What we find a lot is that board members are just, gathering invoices and estimates and keeping those together, but it can be very difficult to go through a thick file of all these invoices and estimates to figure out what's for what's been paid, what hasn't been paid. So we suggest that you have some type of spreadsheet that you have to, or if you have a management system to track all of the items. Again, you want to track what estimates you've gotten or invoices, what payments you've made to vendors, what payments you've gotten from the insurance carrier, because as you go through the claim process, you want to know what the carrier has paid you on, so you know if they're missing invoices, what they need to get in order to make a supplemental payment for you. Establishing a relationship with the vendor proactively is part of that claims process, and those vendors can vary quite a bit. It could be, it could be a landscaper, it could be a pool vendor, it could be a painter, it could be a handyman service that you need. Emergency response companies are always going to be needed for a condo or an HOA. Debris removal is something that's going to be needed in a lot of cases. So again, to have a list of vendors that you do work with that you've approved in the past is very important, especially if a CAM can't be on property. If we've had a hurricane and you as a CAM have multiple properties that you have to get to, or even if you're not the one dealing with the claim and the board is dealing with it, to have that list of vendors to hand off is going to be very important. And it's going to be important as well to have backup vendors. You don't want to just have one of each, because in the event of a catastrophic loss where multiple properties are impacted in your area, a lot of those vendors could be tied up very quickly with other properties. So you want to know who else you can call if those vendors are already at their max. Training your staff and board members about what to do in the event of a claim is going to help you out a great deal. One of the most important items that multiple people need to know within an association where they have a building, whether it's an HOA with a large clubhouse or a condo association, you want to know where the shutoff is for the water. We've had so many claims occur that the damage could have been much less if the CAM or maintenance person or board members on site didn't have to spend 30 minutes or an hour trying to find where the shutoff is for the water. That is a very important piece of knowledge for community members, boards, CAMs to know. When you find an emergency response vendor, a lot of them will do a pre-claim visit to the property so that they can establish in the event of a catastrophic loss, where can they park their trucks? Where is the water shut off? Where are their water connections? Where are generators going to be used? So if you do have an emergency response vendor, go ahead and talk to them while we're in hurricane season right now and see if they need to come out and pre-map your area so that they know what to do when a claim occurs. Budgeting for deductibles and emergencies is going to be part of your claims process as well. So we've mentioned a few times deductibles this morning. Different policies are going to have different levels of deductibles. A general liability policy might not have a deductible at all. Or if you've had claims history, that carrier could have increased that deductible to be $5,000, $10,000, or the board might have increased it to try to save premium. A directors and officers liability policy is going to have a deductible. It could be $1,000, it could be $10,000, which means that you're going to be on the hook, or the association would be on the hook for the first several $1,000s of a D&O claim. Crime policies might have a zero deductible, or they could have a higher deductible depending upon the limit of your crime policy. So if there's theft of association funds, you want to know what that deductible is in case the loss of funds is under that deductible. The really big deductibles usually come into play with property insurance, and there's several different deductibles you could have for property insurance. You could have an equipment breakdown deductible. You could have a separate water damage deductible. There's going to be a named storm or a hurricane deductible, which is going to be typically a percentage of the property value, which can be hundreds of thousands or $1 million or more dollars, depending on the value of the property. And then all other wind and hail is going to have a separate deductible. And those deductibles, again, they could be $5,000, they could be $50,000. So you want to be aware of what those deductibles are and know where that money is going to come from in the event of a claim. If you have an emergency fund with that deductible saved, or, so owners know what they could possibly be assessed for in the event of a loss. Um, if we have a windstorm come through, sometimes Florida just has windstorms come through not during hurricane season, and people are surprised when they call us and they say they might have some damage which seems severe to them, but in the end it's maybe $20,000 worth of damage and it's well below what their deductible might be. So we find that if a board is aware of those deductibles and they have that conversation with the agent to really understand what those deductibles mean ahead of time, it's much more palatable when it comes time to call the agent and they call and they say, hey, all of our pool furniture was damaged in this windstorm and now we have to buy new pool furniture and it's going to cost us $20,000. And then you have to tell them, well, your deductible is $50,000. So nobody likes to hear that when a claim has occurred. So making sure that they understand it ahead of time will be very helpful. So now we've gotten to the fun part of the presentation where we get to test everybody's knowledge. I don't know. Lindsay, do you want to help me with this? Do you want me to go through and read off all of these questions for everybody?
Sorry, I was trying to
Okay.
unmute myself. I can definitely assist you if you would like. Okay, so question 1, what is the most critical time period after an incident? 1 week, 24 to 72 hours, 1 month, or 6 months?
We want everybody to put those in the chat, right?
Yes, if they can.
Sorry, I can do it. I'm sorry, guys. Everyone, go ahead, guys, into the chat.
A, B, C, or D?
They were ready and waiting.
Yes, yes.
All right, good job, everyone. B it is.
24 to 72 hours.
hours.
All right. Next question. Good job, everybody.
All right, question 2. What should be done first after an incident? A, ignore it. B, secure the scene. C, call residents. And D, post online.
Posting online is
Well,
just
I was
the
going to say,
worst.
we know what people do right now. They
We
post
know what they
online.
do. Or ignore it. If you ignore
Right.
it, maybe it will go away. Secure the scene.
C.
Very important.
Question 3. Why is documentation important? A, for marketing. B, to support the claim. C, to increase fees. And D, to delay action.
All right, everybody's really good on that one too. Now I'm going to put in here real quick, even though the answer is to support claims, when it says marketing purposes, it's going to come up at renewal. When you've had a claim, we're going to have to answer to carriers, well, okay, well, they had a claim. What have they done to prevent future claims from happening? So that can be very important for documentation as well. Just a side note.
Okay, number 4. Who should be notified quickly? A, residents only. B, the insurance carrier. C, the vendor. Or D, no one. B, the carrier. Apparently.
Yes. I want to make sure you're talking to your agent, really, your insurance agent.
Yeah, we had an incident here on property just recently where someone closed their finger in a fire door and removed part of it. So
Oh
we
no,
did
that's
submit a
bad.
claim. Well, not a claim, but we did notify everyone just in case. But he admitted it was his fault for not taking his hand out of the way.
Oh, that's
So there
horrible.
wasn't a claim, but it's always important to document it while it's fresh in everyone's memory for sure.
Yes, and keep in mind too, even though somebody might say it on that date, hey, it was my fault.
Yeah, they can
It's
always come
amazing
back.
what can happen, when they've
Yeah,
had
as
a
soon as you
minute
get a
or
hundred
they've talked
thousand
to,
dollar bill from the hospital, you may
yeah,
change your mind.
yes.
All right, number 5. What is a communication mistake? A, being transparent. B, admitting fault. C, updating the board. And D, recording details. Everyone is saying B, admitting fault.
Yes.
Number 6, what should CAMs collect? Photos and reports, furniture, decor, invoices only. A, photos and reports.
Very, very important.
7, what can delay a claim? A, proper reporting, B, incomplete documentation, C, timely action, and D, communication. Frankly, all. Incomplete documentation.
Yeah, we do love B. Yeah, somebody said you guys love
Yeah,
B.
for this course, for these questions, apparently B is the hot topic answer. You know, like on the bubble test, they say pick C. You would be in trouble if you did that on this one.
Hmm.
What should be avoided? Quick response, documentation, unauthorized reports, or communication. Or
Yeah, see,
unauthorized repairs, I
yeah,
apologize.
see, we changed it up.
Unauthorized repairs. 9. Why train staff? Increase costs, improve response, reduce workload, avoid meetings. B, improve response. And question 10, what should be planned? Events, claim response plan, marketing, or sales? B, claim response plan.
Very important. It's because people might think it's not that big of a deal when a claim happens, but when you're sitting there and everybody's looking at you and you've got to figure out what to do right now, it would be so much easier just to pick up a file and look at your list of what you're supposed to do first and just start going down the list. So do we have any questions today, Lindsay?
I am gonna take a look for you. All right, anybody have questions? I don't see anything typed in the Q&A section.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, if you've had a claim recently that you don't know what to do about, or if you've had a past issue that you didn't understand something, feel free to ask and I'll be glad to answer.
Absolutely. And you will all have Kelly's contact information on this slide right here. And we'll put it in the chat for you as well. And that way, if you have any questions that pop in your head that you didn't want to ask today or come up later, you can always reach out. And she is your great source for any insurance questions or needs.
Yes, and we're not claims adjusters. Claims adjusters have their own separate license from agents, but for our customers, we do stay involved in the process so that we can help the CAM, help the board along the way, make sure that things are progressing. The fire that I mentioned, that happened on a Sunday. Somebody called me to notify me that it happened at one of our condos. I got out there within 30 minutes. I was making sure to take photos for the CAM because the CAM was there was a lot going on and people were coming at her from all different directions. So, talk to your agent. If you don't have an agent that likes to help with claims, give us a call. We love what we do. And like I said, we stay involved. So we're very experienced with all that can occur in a claim, all the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, look forward to anybody reaching out to us.
There's one question that popped in here. Okay, board director member dysfunction issues, filing lawsuits against others, members, other board members. Had a vendor fall last September, fall on property, but no one saw him. Adjuster is suggesting we settle. Why?
So with an insurance claim, we do see a lot of settlements because it can be less expensive to settle with a claimant than it would be to go and do a full trial. So, sometimes they call going to trial. Like if you go to trial and you win, it can still be a hollow victory because you still had hundreds of thousands of dollars spent to win this claim, and it's still going to be on your loss runs and show that all this money was paid out on a claim. So if it's going to be less to settle, then that's a lot of times what you're going to see, and it's very aggravating. Everybody gets aggravated by it. That's why it can be very important to document conditions of a claim. If somebody, we had another association where somebody fell but they were able to go
Well,
back and find the footage to show that clearly the person staged the fall. And so you can circumvent a settlement by having proper documentation.
Yeah. It's crazy. With you saying that people have gotten like hip to the security footage only going so long. I mean, if there's a bad actor, they're going to find a way. It's so sad that we have to deal with these kinds of things. Another question came in. If there is insufficient vote back on not to replace a common element, is the association then obligated to replace it or take another proxy vote on it?
So that's more of a CAM education question than an insurance question. That's something that can definitely turn into a director's and officer's liability claim. But I can't advise on that. I did want to say real quick too about the surveillance footage. It's important to limit the access to the surveillance footage. Not every board member needs to have access to it. Not owners do not need to have access to it. And you don't want to let people really know what areas can be seen and not be seen.
Another question just came in, Kelly. Suggestions on what to do when a board refuses to proactively address safety issues or property manage a flood risk. When a board refuses. Oh,
So you, the CAM, want to make sure that you're documenting to show that you've advised them appropriately.
yeah.
You can get the agent involved and have, schedule a meeting with the agent and the board to make sure that they understand. Sometimes they need to hear it from somebody different, whether it's, different from us or different from the CAM, usually another voice can lend to the conversation and maybe even explain it in a different manner, let them know what can be impacted by their failure to act. Um, at some point it's going to impact them one way or the other, but you as the
Yeah.
CAM want to make sure you've documented to show that you've done what you're supposed to do. Same thing with
And
an agent. If we advise an association that they need a coverage and they tell us they're not going to take the coverage, we document that we offered it and have them sign off that they're rejecting it.
oh,
and I
that's
was
a
gonna,
good idea. You could have them sign off on it. Hey board, I as the CAM and I'm letting you know, I'd like proof that you guys are acknowledging that I'm telling you that this is a risk. Yeah, that's a
Hmm.
great idea too.
Hmm.
well, and
Great
then
idea.
Kelly, the question about the fall on property, they said that it was a vendor. Isn't there, I think you've covered this before, a way where when you're signing a contract with a vendor, whether it's a pool contractor, a construction company, where the association is listed on their insurance, and then they would be covered under their own insurance, or should be if they have the right coverage, if something happens while they're on property.
Right. And it depends on the type of vendor, but yeah, if it's a contractor, I mean, any vendor really should have workers' comp, and that's where if you're hurt doing your job, that should be a workers' comp claim. So they should file a claim with their employer. If they are self-employed, then they should either have their own workers' comp policy or an exemption filed with the state. So if you're hiring vendors, contractors mainly, they need to be providing you with proof of that insurance before they start a job, so that if they are hurt, that you know that they have coverage to go to.
Yeah, very good.
And
Very
yes,
good.
any contract that you have with the vendor should include an insurance section. Again, as an agent, we reviewed contracts, the insurance section for associations, because CAMs can't know everything. So send it to the insurance agent and make sure that the vendor's contract is appropriate. And if there's anything that needs to be added, it needs to be done so beforehand, not after the fact.
Okay, Kelly, thank you so much. Guys, one more in here is the associate if the association doesn't have employees, why and should they have workman's comp?
That's a good question. So there is what we refer to as a volunteer workers' comp policy for associations. It's going to cover any volunteers. I always use like a Christmas decorating committee. If your association has a Christmas decoration committee and those people go out and hang wreaths on the signs or, put lights up, nothing risky, nothing on a ladder, nothing that a contractor should be doing, but just light work. If that person gets hurt while they're doing it, then the workers' comp policy will pay for their medical expenses. On the other hand, also, if you have hired a subcontractor to do some work and they gave you proof of insurance, proof of workers' comp, when you hire them, then they come out to do the job, they get hurt, and you find out they didn't pay their bill, then you have a workers' comp policy that can come in if they file a lawsuit against the association.
And I just want to say that we cannot speak highly enough of FCA Insurance. They are friends and colleagues, and we hear from a lot of people on a regular basis. Well, my insurance agent doesn't do that. Well, my insurance, it's like, okay, well, you need a good team. And Lindsay always says that, as a CAM, you have a toolbox and that those are your vendors, and you need a good team representing you. And I'm sorry, but I don't know many people that would go out on a weekend for a CAM. Not that we're wanting to promote that for Kelly to do, but at the same time, like, it just speaks to the credibility of her and their entire agency, who we've worked with Star for a very long time too. They're all great professionals over there, and they go above and beyond. So if you are not happy with your current representation and you're looking to it's budget season. You're looking to get some answers for your board members. Kelly is more than happy to review what you currently have.
Mhm.
Kelly's information is in the chat. We do have to send the contract to the insurance company for review? Question mark.
Not to the insurance company, but to the agent.
And then any special tricks or tips for self-managed communities? That's probably we could probably do a whole course on that.
Mhm. Yeah,
But
I
do you have
mean,
any off the
anything,
top of your
a
head?
self-managed community is going to need to do all the things that we just went over in this presentation, that they just have to do it themselves instead of having, a license and experienced CAM to do it for them.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We got it from here, Ms. Kelly. If you want
Thank
to
you.
take off and get back to all the writing those, what do
Those
you call it?
policies,
Policies,
Write
reviewing
those
those
policies.
contracts.
writing those policies. All right,
Write
everybody
those
have a good day.
policies.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Have a great
Thanks.
day. We appreciate you.
Thank you.